There is a hidden power in a story told with a soft voice and a steady, unwavering hand. Experience our smooth, cinematic narratives that whisper the truths the world has been trying to forget for centuries. Click subscribe now and listen to the soul of storytelling. The call came at 6:47 inches the morning. I know the exact time, because my phone was still in my hand. When it rang, I hadn't slept. I'd been sitting at my kitchen table since 2 a.m., finishing a budget reconciliation report that my manager needed before the Monday board meeting. My coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago. My eyes burned, but the numbers had to be right, because at Harlow and Associates, wrong numbers meant someone's head, and lately, that someone was always me. The name on my screen was Mom. I almost didn't answer. Not because I didn't love her, I did. The way you love something that has always cost you more than you could afford. I answered because I always answered. That was the deal, even if nobody had ever said it out loud. Maya. Her voice was bright. Not worried, bright. Vacation bright. Did I wake you? No, I said. I've been up. Good. Listen. Honey, I need to ask you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything. I set down my pen. That opening "hear me out before you say anything" was never a good sign. It meant the ask was large enough that she already knew I'd want to refuse. My name is Maya Callahan. I'm 31 years old. I'm a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized consulting firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and for the past 6 years, since the moment my first real paycheck cleared, I have been the unofficial, unelected, and entirely unpaid treasurer of my family. It started small, the way these things always do. $100 here for my younger brother Derek's car insurance, $200 there when my mother said the electric bill had gotten out of hand, a plane ticket home for Thanksgiving when she said she missed me. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself they just needed a little help getting back on their feet. My father had left when I was 19, and we'd all scrambled, and I understood what it felt like to be scared of not having enough. So I helped. Because I could. Because nobody else would. What I didn't understand, back then, was that temporary is only a word. In my family, once you started giving, the act of giving became proof that you could give more. By the time I was 28, I was sending my mother $1,200 a month, not as a loan. We'd stopped calling it a loan after the first year, when it became clear that the word was making everyone uncomfortable, and the money was never coming back anyway. Derek, who was 24 and perfectly capable of holding a job, called me every few months with a new emergency, a speeding ticket, a security deposit, once a very detailed story about a dental procedure that I later found out he never actually had. And then there was my sister, Courtney. Courtney was my mother's golden child. I understood this without bitterness, the way you understand weather. She was younger, prettier, funnier at dinner tables, and she had never once been asked to contribute to anything. When she got engaged last spring to a man named Trent whose family had a boat, my mother called me before she called anyone else. The venue deposit alone is $4,500, my mother said, in the same tone someone might use to say good morning. Mom, hear me out. Trent's family is covering half the catering, and Courtney says she can put in $1,000 from her savings. We just need someone to bridge the gap. I bridged the gap. I always bridged the gap. By February of this year, I had given my family, over 6 years, somewhere north of $80,000. I know this because I am a financial analyst. I track things. I have a spreadsheet. I used to look at it sometimes at night and feel something I couldn't name. Not quite regret, not quite grief. Just the slow, quiet sensation of a life being redirected away from itself. I wasn't saving for a house anymore. I wasn't taking the trip to Paris and had been planning since college. I wasn't putting as much into my retirement account as I should have been. But Courtney had her venue deposit. Derek had his dental work, that never happened. My mother had her electric bills and her grocery runs, and, as of last October, a new sectional sofa because the old one was embarrassing. I was so tired. Not just the no-sleep kind of tired, though that was real enough. I mean the other kind. The kind that lives behind your eyes, and follows you into rooms, and makes it hard to remember why you're doing any of it. So when my mother called that February morning and said, "Hear me out," I already knew I was going to say yes to whatever came next. I always did. "We want to take Courtney on a venue tour," she said. "Nashville. There are 3 places there she's had her eye on, and Trent's mom wants to come, and it would just be such a special trip for the girls. 4 days." "Okay," I said slowly. "That sounds nice. The thing is, the hotel Courtney wants it's where Taylor Swift stayed once. She saw it on a blog. It's a little outside our budget." I closed my eyes. "How much?" "If you could cover the hotel, just the hotel, it's $2,200 for 4 nights. The rest we can manage." I said yes. Of course I said yes. I transferred the money that same afternoon. 2 weeks later, I collapsed at my desk. I didn't feel it coming the way they say you're supposed to. There was no warning headache, no tunnel vision. One moment, I was reviewing a variance report, and the next I was on the floor of my office, and my colleague Rachel was crouching over me, saying my name very loudly, and someone else was already on the phone with 911. I woke up in the hospital with an IV in my arm, and a cardiologist named Dr. Osei sitting in the chair beside my bed with the calm expression of someone who has delivered uncomfortable news many times, and has learned to do it gently. "You have a heart condition," he said. "It's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It means the wall of your heart muscle is thicker than it should be. In your case, it's been undetected, probably your whole life. The stress and sleep deprivation you've been experiencing, those things, accelerated this event. Is it serious?" I asked. "It requires surgery," he said. "We'd like to schedule it within the next 48 hours. There's also the matter of some monitoring equipment we'll need to place, and you'll need someone here for consent and recovery support." I asked him to give me a few minutes. Then I called my mother. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear Courtney laughing in the background, and what sounded like a hotel lobby. I told her what Dr. Osei had told me. I told her about the surgery, the 48-hour window, the fact that I was lying in a hospital bed with a heart condition I hadn't known I had. I told her I was scared. There was a pause. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother said. "That's terrifying. Are you going to be okay?" "They think so, but they need to operate soon. And the thing is," she said, and I heard her voice shift into the register I knew better than my own heartbeat, the gentle but firm register, the "this is just," the situation register. "We just got here. We checked in 2 hours ago. Courtney has the venue tours scheduled for tomorrow and the day after, and Trent's mom flew in from Phoenix." I didn't say anything. "The flights home are going to be so expensive to rebook last minute, Maya. And Courtney has been looking forward to this for months." "Mom," I said. "I need surgery." "I know, baby. I know. But whoever he is, he said, it's manageable, right? It's not like you're dying right this second. Can't they do the surgery once we're back? We'd only be 4 more days." I looked at the ceiling of my hospital room. It was white and ordinary, and it had a small water stain near the light fixture, shaped almost like a bird. "Okay," I said. "We'll be there the second we land," she said. "I promise." "And Maya? Could you text me the name of that surgeon? I just want to look him up and make sure he's reputable." I had the surgery without them. Rachel from my office, who I had known for 2 years, and had never once asked for anything, drove herself to the hospital after her shift, sat in the waiting room for 4 hours, and was the first face I saw when I came out of recovery. She had brought a blanket from home. A real blanket, the soft kind, because she said hospital blankets were always terrible, and she thought I might want something that felt like a person had chosen it for me. I cried. Not because I was in pain, though I was. Because of the blanket. Because of the fact that a woman who owed me nothing had driven across the city with a blanket while my mother was touring wedding venues. For the first 5 days, the nurses told me I had no visitors. I believed them. I assumed my mother had called and checked in by phone, and that counted, in her accounting, as being present. On the 6th day, a nurse named Gloria came in to update my chart and mentioned, the way people mention things they assume you already know, that the front desk had been logging my visitors. "Visitors?" I said. "I haven't had any visitors." Gloria looked at me strangely. Honey, someone has been signing in every night, late after 9. They've been here 5 nights in a row. I assumed you knew. She brought me the log. It was a simple thing. A clipboard with a sign-in sheet. Date, time, name, relationship to patient. The same name appeared 5 times. 5 consecutive nights. Always after 9 p.m. Always before midnight. Always the same relationship listed in the column next to it. The name was James Callahan. I stared at that name for a very long time. My father, the man I had called my father, the man who had married my mother and left when I was 19, his name was Robert Voss. He had been Robert Voss my entire life, and after he left, he had stayed gone in the thorough way that some men manage. No calls on birthdays, no acknowledgement of graduations, just a clean disappearance that I had eventually filed under things that don't deserve more of my energy. I had never known a James Callahan, but my last name was Callahan, my mother's maiden name. I had always been told I got it from her side of the family, from a grandfather I'd never met who died before I was born. I called my mother that afternoon, when I could keep my voice steady. Mom, I said, I need you to tell me something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Maya, honey, we're in the middle of, who is James Callahan? The silence that followed was not a confused silence. It was not the silence of someone searching their memory. It was the silence of someone who has been waiting, for a very long time, to be asked a question they always knew was coming. Where did you hear that name? She said finally. He's been visiting me every night in the hospital, Mom. For 5 nights. He signs in as my family. Another silence. Longer this time. He's your biological father, she said. I sat with that for a moment. Outside my window, a pigeon landed on the ledge and then left. Tell me, I said. And she did. Not willingly, the words came out in pieces, halting and defensive, with long pauses where I could hear her deciding how much to admit. But the shape of it was this. She had met James Callahan when she was 24, before she met Robert. They had been together for 2 years. She had been in love with him, genuinely, and then something had happened. She was vague about what. Something about his family, something about money, something about a choice he made that she couldn't forgive, and they had ended badly. When she found out she was pregnant, she had already started seeing Robert. Robert was stable. Robert wanted to be a father. James had tried to reach her, she said, but she had told him the baby wasn't his. She had believed, she said, that it was the right thing at the time. She had believed it for 31 years. Did he know? I asked. Did he always know? He suspected, she said quietly. A few years after you were born, he reached out again. I confirmed it. I told him you were healthy and taken care of, and that it would only confuse things. And he just accepted that? He didn't have a choice, Maya. I had full custody. Robert was on the birth certificate. There was nothing he could do legally, but he kept track of me, I said. It wasn't a question. I was thinking of 5 signatures on a clipboard. 5 nights of sitting in a hospital waiting room, probably not even allowed past the front desk, just signing in, and sitting there and leaving before morning, so as not to startle me. My mother didn't answer that one. I asked Gloria to send him in the next time he came. He arrived at 9:20 that night. I heard the knock before I saw him, soft and uncertain, the knock of someone who wasn't sure they had the right to be there. He was tall, taller than I'd expected, with gray at his temples and dark eyes that were, I realized with a start, exactly the same shape as mine. He was holding a paper cup of coffee he'd clearly just bought and hadn't yet touched. You didn't have to knock, I said. It's a hospital room, not a house. I wasn't sure, he said, if you'd want to see me. Sit down, I said. He sat. His name was James Callahan. He was 58 years old. He had never married. He had a small landscaping business outside of Nashville that he had built by himself over 20 years, and he told me quietly, and without flourish, followed the outline of my life from a distance, ever since my mother had confirmed the truth when I was 3 years old. He had been at my high school graduation, standing in the back. He had driven to Charlotte when he heard, through some channel I didn't ask about, that I'd gotten a job at Harlow and Associates. He had sat in the parking lot of a restaurant once, he admitted, when I'd been inside having dinner, just to see that I was okay. That sounds like something a person could get arrested for, I said. I know, he said. I wasn't. I want you to understand. I wasn't watching you. I was just making sure. There's a difference. Is there? He thought about it seriously, which I appreciated. Maybe not, he said. I think I told myself there was because the alternative was admitting that I had no claim on you and no right to be anywhere near your life, and that was something I couldn't entirely live with. I asked him why he hadn't fought harder. Why he hadn't taken my mother to court, demanded a paternity test, made himself legally impossible to ignore. He was quiet for a long time. Because she told me you were happy, he said. And I believed that the worst thing I could do for a child I loved was blow up her life to satisfy my own need to be in it. So I stayed away, and I watched from the outside. And I told myself that as long as you were okay, it was enough. And when you found out I was in the hospital? I got in my truck, he said simply. I didn't cry. I had done a lot of crying in the days before this. The private kind. The kind you do at 2 a.m. when your family is on vacation while you recover from heart surgery, and I think I had temporarily run out. What I felt instead was something slower and stranger, like a room in a house I'd lived in my whole life. A room I'd always assumed was a closet, turning out to have a window. We talked until the nurse came in at 11, and said visiting hours were over. He stood up immediately, apologized to her for staying so long, and turned back to me at the door. I'll come back, he said, if that's okay. It's okay, I said. My mother and Courtney arrived back in Charlotte on a Wednesday, 4 days after my surgery, 2 days after my first real conversation with James Callahan. They came to the hospital together, my mother carrying a gift bag with a candle and some chocolates inside, Courtney already on her phone. And they settled into my room with the energy of people doing a generous thing. You look so much better, my mother said. See? The surgery went perfectly, just like we said it would. I looked at her, at the gift bag, at the candle, which was the kind that costs $11 at TJ Maxx. Mom, I said, I know about James Callahan. Courtney looked up from her phone. My mother's expression did something complicated, a series of small movements that traveled from surprise to guilt to a kind of preemptive defense, all in the span of about 2 seconds. Maya, I don't want to fight about it, I said. I want to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything. Something flickered across her face when I used her own phrase back at her. She sat down. I've been doing the math, I said. Not just on James, on everything. 6 years of transfers. Loans that were never loans. Emergencies that were sometimes real and sometimes weren't. I've been the financial backbone of this family since I was 25 years old, and for 6 years I told myself it was because I loved you. And I do. That part is true. I took a breath. But I was in surgery, and you were looking at wedding venues. And I had to hear that my biological father exists from a visitor log, while he was driving 4 hours to sit in a hospital waiting room for a child who didn't even know his name. So I need to make some changes. And I need you to understand that the changes are permanent, not temporary, not until things settle down, not negotiable. My mother opened her mouth. I'm not finished, I said. I wasn't harsh about it. I was just clear, maybe for the first time. I will not be sending monthly transfers anymore. I will not be covering wedding expenses. Derek is an adult, and his emergencies are his to manage. I love all of you. But I am also a person, and this person just had heart surgery alone, and I have decided that I am done mistaking guilt for love. The room was very quiet, Courtney said. So you're not going to help with the wedding? No, I said. She looked at me for a long moment, then she went back to her phone. My mother cried. I let her. I didn't apologize. I had spent 31 years apologizing in advance for things that weren't my fault, and I found I had run out of those too. They left an hour later. My mother hugged me at the door. A real hug. Tight enough that I felt it in my chest, And for a second, I thought she might say something real, something that matched the hug. But she just told me to take care of myself, and then she was gone. 6 weeks later, I drove to Asheville for the first time. James Callahan's landscaping company was called Ridgeline Green, and it sat at the edge of a 2-lane road with a gravel parking lot and a hand-painted sign that he had made himself and was, frankly, not his strongest work. The office was a converted shed. There were plants everywhere, not the tidy landscaping showroom kind, but real ones, messy and varied, growing in pots and beds and along a low fence in a way that looked accidental and wasn't. He came out when he heard my car, wiping his hands on his jeans, squinting against the afternoon light. "You drove," he said. "You drove to Charlotte and sat in a parking lot to watch me eat dinner," I said. "I think we're past remarking on the distances we're willing to cover." He smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile, and I had to look somewhere else for a second, because it was too much like looking in a mirror, and I wasn't ready for that yet. We had lunch at a diner down the road where he was clearly a regular, where the waitress called him James and brought him coffee before he asked. I ordered a BLT. He ordered the same. We talked for 3 hours, about things that were small and things that were large, and some things that were both at once his business, my job, the heart condition that it turned out runs in his family, and that I might have been screened for years ago if anyone had known to look. "That's on me," he said quietly, when I mentioned it. "It's on a lot of things," I said. "I'm not keeping score." I meant it. I had done enough accounting for one lifetime. I don't know what James Callahan and I will become to each other. I don't have a name for what it is yet. He's not the father of my childhood. He's not a stranger. He's not quite either of those things. And maybe he's something the English language hasn't bothered to invent a word for, because most people don't need it. But he drove 4 hours and signed a clipboard 5 nights in a row for a daughter who didn't know his name, and I think that tells me most of what I need to know about his character. I sent my mother a birthday card in March. I called Derek twice. I did not contribute to the wedding fund. Courtney's wedding was in April. It was smaller than originally planned. A garden ceremony, 40 guests, no hotel brunch the next morning, no shuttle service from the venue. From what I heard, it was actually lovely. I wasn't invited. That part stung for about a day, and then I decided it was probably the most honest thing my family had ever offered me, a clear picture, finally, of what I had been to them, and what I no longer needed to be. On the weekend of Courtney's wedding, I was in Asheville. James and I drove up to the Blue Ridge Parkway on Saturday morning and walked a trail that was too long for someone 8 weeks out of cardiac surgery, and I didn't care even a little. The trees were the kind of green that only happens in spring, that particular shade that feels temporary and urgent, like it knows it's only going to last for a few weeks, and it's making the most of them. He pointed out plants as we walked, named them without being asked, the way people do when they know something well enough that sharing it is just natural. Bloodroot, trillium, wild ginger. He said the names quietly, like they were worth saying correctly. I had $80,000 I hadn't gotten back. I had a heart condition I hadn't known about. I had a father I hadn't known about either. I had a colleague who'd brought me a blanket from home and never mentioned it again, because that was the kind of person she was. I had said no, out loud, to my mother's face, in a hospital room, without apologizing afterward. I had not crumbled. The world had not ended. What had ended was something else, a version of myself that had been so afraid of being abandoned that she had made herself indispensable instead, and called that love, and kept the receipts. At the top of the trail, we stopped at a overlook. The mountains went on in every direction, ridge after ridge, softened by distance and haze, the kind of view that puts things in proportion without trying. "Are you okay?" James asked. "Not about my heart, just in general. Just checking." "Yeah," I said. And I meant it in a way I hadn't meant much of anything in a long time. "I think I actually am."